Sit down, Junior. I'm gonna tell you a little story. In 2005, the first fully-fledged video game Sonic the Hedgehog voice cast were completely replaced by actors working under the 4Kids agency in New York. These actors had previously worked on the TV adaptation of the Sonic games at the time, Sonic X. Favoring cohesion between the show and the games over their existing cast, Sega would replace Ryan Drummond, William Corkery, Scott Dreyer, Jennifer Douliard, and the late Dean Bristow with Jason Griffith, Amy Pallant, Dan Green, Lisa Ortiz, and Mike Pollock respectively. The reaction to this from Sonic fans is well documented and has long become a factor to the reputation of Sonic fans as massive crybabies.
And plus, his shouts, yeah! Yes! Okay! Jesus, it's just so fake. At least Ryan Drummond speaks normally. I don't need to listen to a wimpy, bland, and emotionless voice. It also sounds like it's trying to be manly instead of teenage.
Typically, any fuckhead who was dumb enough to find Chris Thorndike or this newly lazy, high-pitched Sonic enjoyable, it sprouted a division between Sonic fans, and it seems Griffith lovers are at wit's end about the typically smarter hardcore fans. They expect us to respect their opinion, and yet I have yet to come across one of these dipshits who haven't gone around laughing at those who called in to have Ryan Drummond in Brawl.
Games that make you want to kill yourself!
And then with the next casting changeover in 2010, calls to fire Jason Griffith were replaced with calls to fire Roger Craig Smith as the Studiopolis cast would take over from the 4Kids cast, just when the 4Kids cast got good. But somewhere down the line, the Sonic fans realized, what are we doing? Nobody goes out of their way to do a bad job. We're a better fandom at this point. We're combating our reputation as entitled brats, so we're now assuming that the cast are actually doing their absolute best, and passing the buck along to Jack Fletcher. Now you're probably wondering, who the fuck is Jack Fletcher? Who did he play in Sonic? Jack Fletcher is the current voice director for the Central Sonic the Hedgehog series, and has been since Sonic Free Riders back in 2010, and he's worked on every game as well as the Sonic Boom TV series, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, and other spin-offs. He's the latest guy that Sonic fans want fired. The latest person for them to point their fingers at. Because they don't want to fire the voice actors, but they don't like the voices, and something's gotta give. So, the tough pill to swallow is that we haven't actually changed since 2006. We're just 10 times more hypocritical about it. Now, I'm going to say this. There's nothing wrong with hoping for new voice actors, sharing fan castings, and having conversations about the behind-the-scenes stuff. The idea of just wanting new approaches and new people isn't inherently bad. But how is calling for people to be fired and making comments about their career skills in any way constructive? I do want to mention, though, that wanting people fired isn't exclusively unreasonable. Political views are one thing, but the way, for example, Mike Pollock, the voice of Dr. Eggman, conducts himself on social media is genuinely unacceptable. It's all very public-facing stuff, so I think that is a bit more justified. But Jack Fletcher? You know nothing about Jack Fletcher. None of us know anything about Jack Fletcher. This is just unreasonable. But what's just absurd to me is the public looking up the name of a voice director they've decided they don't like, posting his name online in scathing posts, sometimes accompanied with a picture of him as though his appearance in any way impacts his ability to do his job, when Jack Fletcher's job is not public-facing in any way at all. So to these people who seem okay with him being named and shamed for doing a job, I have to ask, what do you know about Jack Fletcher? What do you know about Jack Fletcher's job? The answer, if we're being completely honest, is nothing. Largely assumptions. So, let's actually take a look at who all these Sonic fans seem to know better than. Jack Fletcher. Quite a stacked IMDb profile, quite a prolific body of work. You've got the recent Looney Tunes The Day the Earth Blew Up, The Legend of the Three Caballeros for Disney, and the Final Fantasy series, all of which have very well-received voice direction. So he's not some rank amateur stumbling his way into the booth by any stretch. Now, it's really funny. I've talked before about how angry Sonic fans are just a bunch of Karens more likely to call for the checkout worker to be fired than to actually give constructive feedback to HQ, or because their coupon wasn't cashed. And that was in reference to writer Ian Flynn, who's received a lot of abuse from the Sonic fans over the years, but can also be used in reference to fans who think Yuji Uekawa is a washed artist because his art now more closely reflects the current style guide, something he probably doesn't have a say in. People want Ian Flynn fired due to his recent work being reference-heavy, when that only became the case when he started working directly on the Sonic games, the first of which that he worked on was making a constant effort to reinforce continuity. It's almost like there are notes that we don't know about, stipulations from higher-ups and stockholders. As someone who has had on and off contract work in production, I can safely tell you that production crew, your directors, your ADs, your coordinators, your technicians, all of those are incredibly hardworking people, usually with ideas that could absolutely propel projects to new heights, but investors want things done differently, and you'll never know what those notes and guidelines are. Maybe the fact that over the past 15 years, we've had the same director and the same voice actors, but with performances that massively vary, maybe that's indicative of, I don't know, the fact that the games have completely varied too? Sometimes Sonic's voice is deeper and more casual, and sometimes it's higher pitched and more cartoony. Maybe that has something to do with, like, all of this, the whole tone, the colors, all of it. It all points to how Sega want this brand represented. In the interviews in lead up to Sonic Frontiers, Sonic brand director Takashi Iizuka mentioned that 3D Sonic games would now be targeting older fans, while the 2D games would be more approachable to kids. And everything we're seeing, including voice direction, is reflective of that. So maybe the fact Sonic no longer convincingly sounds like a teenager anymore is because, well, that's just not what they're going for anymore. One thing I do know is that voice directors work within incredibly tight guidelines. These are not auto-film directors like Christopher Nolan or Robert Eggers. These are people simply doing a job and following instructions. But when you do hear bad reads in voiced productions, this can be for all manner of reasons. Mario Tanaka over on Twitter did quite a good job illustrating the difference in the voice direction from some Amy lines to others. How some reflect a more Generations-esque style, while others reflect more of a Boom Amy style.
Follow me inside, outside, through the stratosphere! Victory's so sweet, I gotta savor it! Yeah, let's go! I did it! Back off, SPO! That was cheap, Jet! Really, Knuckles?
And so people are probably wondering, what is this director doing? How could he mess those up? Well, it's quite simple. What probably happened was they probably tried to run through one way, then did another in a different overall tone, and then maybe someone decided to use a mix of the takes for the final product. That someone wouldn't be the voice director, and that someone could have received an abundance of notes directing them to do just that. There are also lots and lots of different factors, such as how much time the actors were booked in for, whether or not they could record pickups. There are a lot of conditions that these people all have to work under. But also, if you're berating Jack Fletcher as a means of not blaming things on the actors, well, to imply that everything you like or dislike about someone's performance depends entirely on direction is also just really belittling to the actors involved. It's far more insulting to take away all their credit entirely than it is to just critique deliveries in a constructive and decent manner. Just as credit never falls solely onto one person in a collaborative process, blame doesn't either. I often see regurgitated that changing the voice actors wouldn't solve the problem and firing Jack Fletcher would, as though if you had another director in the booth with Roger Craig Smith, you'd suddenly love Roger Craig Smith's voice as Sonic when you didn't before. Suddenly he sounds like Ryan Drummond! No, he sounds like Roger Craig Smith. Different direction isn't going to make Roger Craig Smith any less Roger Craig Smith. Which works for me, as I happen to like Roger Craig Smith. If you loved how Sonic and his friends sounded in Sonic Boom, but hate how they sounded in Sonic Frontiers, well, you don't have a problem with the voice director. You have a problem with the tonal guidelines which are given per project. Jack Fletcher didn't just one day decide Sonic's going to sound deep in this game. There were a lot of conversations that led to that point, and that's largely due to feedback on the prior decade of Sonic content, which Sega have clearly taken on board. So who should we blame? Who should we fire? Nobody. Everybody involved is doing their best, and our feedback is going back to the shareholders, clearly. People complained about the tone of the franchise in the 2010s, so they changed it. People complained about the quality of the games, and now we're seeing a marked change. They're listening, So if you just give decent feedback, they will listen. They'll hear your complaints about the voice deliveries and find something that works. Whether or not you like it is going to be subjective. There is no one way these characters should act and sound. These are characters that are well over 30 years old who have seen lots of different approaches and directions, especially when it comes to the English dubs. And that might have something to do with the fact that Sonic, ever since having a voice in the first place, has never really landed on one singular voice when in English. And that's probably down to the fact that the time Sonic got a voice was also the time when the internet was becoming a household thing.
Fucking kill game designers!
And looking at the 2010s, Sega clearly weren't very familiar with how to deal with the internet. Things are different now. They're listening, so if you just give decent feedback, they will listen. Now, I really don't want to be pretentious or holier-than-thou about this. I'm not claiming I'm perfect either. I've, in the past, pointed bits of blame at people here and there. I've defended some stupid decisions, despite the fact that my intention was never actually to communicate any kind of wish to fire anybody or name names. I know sometimes people get carried away on social media. I'm the same, so I'm not out to demonize anybody. But I think this discourse right here just needs to stop. Treat people the way you'd want to be treated. Give creatives the benefit of the doubt, because that industry can be suffocating to the people who make it matter, and we shouldn't become a part of that problem as the audience.